If there is a message for us today, I believe it is to learn to live from our heart in love. These short lessons, hopefully, will help to inspire you to live with purpose, love passionately, and inspire others. We are the change agent our world needs. I'm Helen Toews. Step into the river today with me to explore the mysteries of God. They are not hidden from us, but for us to discover.
I've been excited. I've been looking forward to this. We texted a little bit. The Lord has woken me up in the middle of the night, or as I'm drifting off to sleep, all of a sudden I'm just wide awake going, ooh, write that down. Make a note, make a note.
Nice.
They are not linear. So I promise no clear path from the start to the end, but I do promise that he'll tie it all together.
Well, I think that's awesome. None of us here are linear, so you're in the right place. We're trying to get out of that this is that kind of mode. But I would just like to take a moment before Todd comes on. I want to do a personal introduction because at the end of this week, there's 500 other people that share in our river, even though they're not on tonight. So I want to do that. But first of all, any books, guys? Anybody reading anything good that we need to know about?
Seat of the
Okay,
soul.
Gina, Seat of the Soul. You're
Yep. Seed of the Soul.
okay, by Gary
Zhukav.
Zhukav. Sounds Russian or
Yep.
like something, right? And why do we have to read this?
Really good book. And then there's another one. I finished this one already. I'm into another one by Carolyn Miss. Not the Sacred Contracts. That's a good one. But The Anatomy of the Spirit.
The Anatomy of the Spirit. Okay.
Anatomy of the Spirit. Yeah.
Okay.
By Carolyn Miss.
Any
Amazing.
comments on them? Like you have to read them because
Oh, well, because I'm a freak and I read everything. But this, the books I'm reading right now are just confirming and realigning the lessons and the resonations and the reckoning
right.
that we are all doing right
That's
now.
awesome. Awesome.
So it's kind of nice because these people who write books can put it into words.
Right.
Yeah,
very affirming, right?
Yeah. And it feels nice because you're sort of like, oh, I know this. Oh, I get that. Oh yeah, I know that. I know. Oh, awesome. So of course there's always new things to learn,
Yeah.
of course. But
Cool.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, that's what I'm being drawn to these certain books right now, and that's what I'm finding. So it's solidifying in me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's cool. Thank you. I always like to know what people are reading. My new book is very spiritual. It's called Trump, The Art of the Deal. I thought,
Nice.
yeah, I just thought I'd read it. Why not?
Yeah.
There you go. I'll let you know. I'll let you know. Anyway, welcome everybody, and I see people are still coming on, which happens. Our New Zealand, Australia folk, they've had a time change, I believe. And I'm not sure how that is working. Maggie, welcome. You just came on in England. And so we're sort of finding our time zones again. We seem to do that every once in a while. I'm going to pin myself and Todd, where are you, darling? There you go. Just for a moment. There we go. There we go. To this room, Todd really doesn't need any introduction because he is such a friend of our community, and I am absolutely beyond excited that he said yes to come and share with us tonight. Todd and Elizabeth and Jen, I don't know how many years, it's 3 or 4 years now. Todd did something online, like we didn't, nobody knew anybody. It was COVID, and we were starting up and getting to know people and all that, because we weren't allowed out of our house, heaven forbid, all that kind of stuff. And one night we were talking, I think we're doing heart-brain coherence, and talking about allowing for the feeling to come in, how important that is. And Todd walked in, and he didn't know he was on camera. And Jen and Elizabeth were in the meeting. Todd walked in, and he started an interaction with Jen that was pure love. It was absolutely the most, I'm tearing up actually as I'm thinking about it, because it was so impacting and so sweet to my soul, to my heart, as I'm watching. And I think, God, you couldn't have done anything more amazing than allow me this. Of course, we all had that. This is just how it affected me. Had this glimpse of unconditional love and compassion. That, Todd, has stayed with me every day since then. Like, silly little thing, right? You're caught in the act of being yourself, and just a huge impact. Anyway, then we started to get to know each other, and we have some really goofy things in common. We seem to be brother and sister from other parents. Yet, I was telling him, I'm talking about you like you're not here, Todd, that my dad was a pilot, and it was in the 40s. And he at one time was the pilot for Haile Selassie. And I have Haile Selassie dad kind of stories that are kind of fun, but I won't share with you. And Todd says, "Oh, my father was Haile Selassie's dentist." And I thought, well, how does that happen, right? How does that happen that he puts people together with these common threads? And Todd, all those kind of things have just been charming, fun, as you are. And we're very grateful for you taking the time with us tonight. And because every time, I'm going to say every time that you and Elizabeth and Jen are on and you contribute, we sort of think, thank God for Todd. This is amazing. This is just sort of every one of us are so delighted. Anyway, enough of that, because you may start going into your ego. We don't want that, because we have studies on that. Todd, welcome. We love you. Bless you. And I'm going to just over to you. You let us know. And if there are questions, I'll keep an eye on the chat. How's that?
Awesome. A little hard to talk. So if I'm going to blame it on the cold that I had last week and not the moment that you just shared, because that really hit me harder than any time you shared it before just now. Deeper and in a special way. But I'll start it off by saying I have a cheat code. And for those of you who don't know, Elizabeth Plank, there with Jen next to her, that's my lovely wife and my daughter. And Jen is, we used to call her our godometer. We weren't expecting Jen to be born the way she was. Weren't ready for it in our planning, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really wouldn't trade it for the world. She turns 25 in 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks. And I just can't imagine, and I think I've said it before, but to just set the table a little bit, whatever I share tonight, I've just given, I'll say it this way. I've given it to God that I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to prep. I'm going to get some ideas down and I'm going to make a nice linear. Well, that just didn't work. Every time I sat down to do what I would do in a presentation as though I were at work, I kept getting distracted or I got really sick and I just couldn't focus and fell asleep. But he would wake me up and just give me these reminders. So I'm going to share some moments throughout my life that got me from being the son of two amazing parents to amazingly loving, but in the way that they learned how to show love, right? Which I think you all know what that means, right? They did the best they can. They used the tools that their parents gave them, and they were great for me. And um, they were also in such a positive and uplifting way for the most part that I cut myself no quarter my entire life. I gave myself no slack. I remember being the smallest child, and one of my first memories is just being disciplined by my mother. And the words that she used were not awful words. I mean, nobody's going to call CPS on her for what she said, especially back then. But I remember how I felt about myself, that I was unworthy of their love. I was unworthy to be around my mom and my dad and my sister. And we grew up an army family, just the three of us moving around. I was born in Ethiopia. The first place we ever lived was Texas, and I've lived all over. Got to live in Hawaii as a little kid, which was amazing. I wish that for every child, because it was everything you would think, because I was in second and third grade and there was no pressure. I say that I've got some memories that I may share if led to, but just being that free. I will say this though, that I used to watch Gilligan's Island when we lived in Georgia. And when I found out we were moving to Hawaii, that's what I expected. And I was so excited because there would be no more school. There would be coconut cream pies all the time. I just figured that my redheaded mom, who was an actress, would actually be the Marianne and not the Ginger, and she would bake these pies for me. And my dad could do anything, so he was the professor. But I got to tell you, when they said we're about to land, and I looked out and I saw buildings and roads and cars, as soon as I saw the buildings, I knew that there was going to be school, and I got so angry. I got so angry. I remember these sweet women trying to hang a lei on me and give me a kiss. And I'm just like, this isn't what I signed up for. I've had that feeling a few times in my life. And I remember having to make that adjustment. But my parents always showed love, but it wasn't as nurturing a love as you might think, right? As some people would. Like, I think Elizabeth is very, touch is her love language. She's very physical in her love. I've learned to be more that way. But we were not a hugging family, to be honest. But I don't remember ever not feeling love. I felt unworthy sometimes by my own actions. And so you can imagine when you grow up that way and I was raised in the Catholic Church, that just reinforced all of, yeah, you've got a loving father, but don't screw up too much or you're out of the family. And I remember my grandfather, who was an amazing, amazing figure in my life and mentor, and just, one step removed from my own father. So I would listen a little bit more. Shocker, right? But he sewed into me things that are amazing. But we only saw him every few years, maybe once a year when we were younger. And so the time that I got with him, those are very special moments that I treasure. But he was a fierce warrior. That was his vocation. He was OSS in World War II. He was started one of the very early OSS, morphed into the CIA, morphed into special operations. So he was a commando. And that's what my wife, oh, sorry, excuse me. That's what well, that was Freudian. That's what my mother and her family grew up with. And he could be very scary because he didn't know how to be a civilian. But to me, he was amazing. Now, I was intimidated, but also he taught me some really cool stuff. And he was great to me. But every word that was spoken over me was, you've got so much potential. You're going to go so far. You're going to do this. You've got so much potential. And I believed it. But whenever I messed up, I was so hard on myself. So that's going to be a lot of the theme, because that's what, when I started praying and saying, okay, and turning in, not turning up and out, but turning in and saying, okay, what are we going to talk about? What do you want to talk about? He just kept reminding me of the moments where he's had to remind me who he really is, and had to show me unconditional love. And she's sitting right there next to Elizabeth, in a way that I could receive it. Jen's missing her 2 front teeth. That's not because of her condition. That's because she's in a wheelchair, and sometimes Dad didn't put the straps on right. And she fell out, lost her first tooth when I was putting her in her chair. And I can't describe to you what that felt like. I'm supposed to be the safe space for her. And I was trying to adjust her wheelchair to make her more comfortable. And you couldn't design this in Hollywood to have been a better prop. I went to adjust her chair, which had tilt, and it had the fold. You could reduce the fold, so it reclined and it would tilt. Well, I don't know what I was thinking. We were actually at a ministry event, and I went to adjust the chair, and I did both at the same time, and it actually flung her out of the chair, and she hit the pew face first, while somebody's speaking, and then the shriek and the tears. And I picked her up, and I'm holding her in my arms, and she's looking at me, and she's bleeding, and I can see her tooth, and I just touched it, and it just came right out. It didn't break off. It just came right out. She had hit on her tooth to where it jammed up into the bone so hard, it disconnected and just slid right out. And so she's bleeding and crying, and I'm kissing on her and I'm apologizing. And within a minute, she's smiling and doing exactly what she's doing. She's got this huge daddy right there that fast, not even remembering the pain or the trauma. And so she's my cheat code. In many ways, and we talk about the I am, we talk about I and am in the capital. And I'll tell you what this is going to be about is the fact that we never were separated from God, that I will never leave you or forsake you. He wasn't joking. That's not a bumper sticker to God. He really meant it, even before Jesus, even before that time. I mean, in fact, that is before the New Testament. But for me to realize that, and for that to become part of who I am in my heart, and not just, oh, I get it, but it's still conditional, right? Because of sin or because of this or my behavior or whatever. For that to have become so real, I needed something in my life that, one, would ground me and humble me, because I was quite capable. I did fine in school. Once they figured out, they started me a year early and they pushed me back, which was awful when you're a little kid on the same playground, getting picked on by the guys in second grade that you started with, and now you're in first grade. But that didn't last very long, because all of a sudden I was the oldest kid in the class, reading and math were easy, where they used to completely stress me out. And school became something that I was able to do without a lot. I mean, I did study, of course, and there are some things like organic chemistry and analytical chemistry. You don't wing those courses. But school became easy. Success wasn't easy, but I had a very strong work ethic from my parents and a lot of encouragement behind it. But again, I was very hard on myself whenever I didn't do it to my expectations, and that bar was too high. That bar was too high. And it's generational in our family. And I know that there's nobody out there that identifies with that, right? It's not a curse because people do it with love. But sometimes, I tried with Connor, who's just turned 24 2 days ago, our son. I tried with him to say it's okay to make mistakes. That doesn't disqualify you from anything, not even in the moment. But I had to actually see him. I remember one time we were walking and I was checking my email on my phone, and I got the bill from Apple for our account, and there was $200 and some in-app purchases. So my little 11-year-old son was playing some video game where you could buy up your skills and buy up your weapons. And he just kept doing it and doing it. $200 in 1 month. And we're about to get in my truck and we're in the driveway. And I said, Connor, at first I'm looking at it, I'm like, this has to be a mistake. I thought it was phishing or some sort of scam. Then I realized, no, this was in-app purchases. And so I said to him, did you buy a bunch of swords for Blade Master or whatever the game was? And he stopped and he looked at me and he immediately turned around and started running down the street. And I remember doing that twice when I was a little guy growing up. I may or may not have tried to forge my mother's signature on a paper that I didn't do well on when I was in 4th grade. I don't know if you remember what your children's handwriting was like in 4th grade, but it looks nothing like the cursive signature of a full-grown woman. And I will admit that I am fully male, which means that right up until and probably past 27 for myself, I couldn't think past the moment to the possible consequences thereof. So when I forged that signature, it didn't occur to me that later they would send home a whole stack of papers for the semester or whatever for her to review. And when she found it, she literally just looked up from the table and said, "What is this?" What did I do? I said, "You signed that." She said, "I most certainly did not." And I just turned around and I ran out the back door. And I think I ran 1/4 mile into the deep woods up from our house, just going, well, I guess I'm homeless now. And that wasn't even a word then. I guess I'm a hobo, gonna have to learn how to jump a train. That's how I grew up, and that's how I thought of myself. And I really didn't heal from that until pretty recently. And we're talking several decades later. But there's a few things that helped me with that. And I can tell you that that's a very long intro. I told you it wouldn't necessarily be linear, but it's coming back to Jen because she taught me unconditional love. It doesn't mean I've got a master's degree in it or even a PhD. I'm still learning, but boy, am I better than the Todd before Jen. And you asked about books. I'm even going to quote them tonight. One of the most pivotal books that I've ever read in my life was The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr. And Kathy, I know you're a big fan, but I cannot tell you what that did to take down my walls of judgment and division and understanding. In fact, I've got a quote here. I've started rereading it time and time again. But in the very first, it's not even a chapter. It says, "Before we begin." That's the title. It's not even the prologue. It says, "Before we begin." he tells the story of a woman who was riding in a train in the underground, I think in London. And he said, but before I tell this story, he says, I tell this story to reveal what I am going to refer to as the Christ mystery. Now, the first time I read it, over and over and over, I got a little triggered by saying, what's the mystery about Christ? There's no mystery about Christ. He is who he said he was. He is Jesus. He is this. He is that. What's the mystery? Well, here's how we're going to define that through the rest of the book, is what he said. The indwelling of the divine presence in everyone and everything since the beginning of time as we know it. That is Christ. That is the Christ. That is the Messiah. HaMashiach. I mean, I don't know if I looked it up in Strong's, but that's how he defines the Christ mystery. And he uses mystery and myth and mystic as words that are experiential, not taught. Okay. And there's so much on that just even today, I got 4 more little quotes from him that really kind of just bring that home. Because we've talked about this, I wasn't joking in the story that Helen told at the beginning. When I walked in, it was usually that I was coming home from work, or I had just recently gotten home from work, as Jen and Elizabeth are sitting down to dinner to get online with and talk about these deep things of God that are so far over my head that I'm like, okay, I think I need to go watch baseball or football or something while there's no football on Wednesdays usually. But I'd find some sport, or I'd find something that I was like, okay, I can do this. I don't have to think so hard. But eventually I got to listening, and then eventually, I think Helen said, let's say hi to Todd, that and so I sat, and eventually I sat down and I said, okay, I'll just listen. I don't have anything to add. I really did feel like a high school freshman who had walked into a postgraduate university course when I listened to you all talking. And I still sometimes am blown away by the revelation that you all share, but I'm experiencing it now in so many ways. And I may not get it the way that Elizabeth does, when she quotes Joel Goldsmith or Eckhart Tolle or any of these, well, just call them gurus for now, which just really means a spiritual leader, but someone who's kind of mastered something, if you would, these gurus. It doesn't have to be so high and mighty. I was able to experience it. I kid you not. I think I was watching an episode of The Office, a rerun of The Office, and I went, that's what Elizabeth was talking about. But that's how he had to show it to me, how to make it real to me, make it experiential to me. Maggie's poetry, I can't wait for her to do that. And I just listen in awe. And I say, I cannot communicate. I'm not good with words like she is. It's different. But she has a way of unlocking a depth with beauty. I mean, it is what I call the truest form, not the truest form, but such a great expression of the creativity that God put in her to share with the world, to release in a way that people just go, oh my gosh, that was beautiful. And I followed it and I understood it. It didn't make me think, okay, well, I have to go look that up later. So I'm so honored to just even be a part of this. But I'll tell you, it took me a long time to unlearn what I had learned growing up. And I am not a Catholic Church basher anymore. I'm not even truly the big Western church basher anymore. But I will tell you that I shared with a pastor at lunch on Friday, and it was the second time that I had lunch with him and shared this same thing. I said, there's things that I believe now that I would probably never say from the pulpit. And I was specifically talking about our church, not because I would be excommunicated, but because not everybody's ready to hear it the way we talk about it. Now, let me step back and say this. That doesn't mean we're better. I had to get over that too. That doesn't mean we're more right, that we've got the key that they don't have. It's experiential, and y'all are so hungry that your hunger is contagious, and it makes me go after the deeper things. And so I'm starting to experience things at a different level than I ever could have in the way I was trained up as in a research degree in science of food and nutrition to go research this. I used to, Helen, it is so hard for me. Elizabeth says at night, why don't you just read the Bible to relax instead of listening to a fiction book or watching a TV program? Because when I listen to the Bible, I'm like, oh, I wonder what the Aramaic really said and how deep and what was the content. I end up doing a half an hour of research on 2 verses. That is not relaxing for me. It's exciting, it's energetic, but it doesn't get me ready for bed. It gets me ready to just do more. And so I've got to experience it in my own way. And with that, I'm just going to check. Are y'all tracking? Okay. Because sometimes I'm like, I'm good at connecting things in my own head, but not always good in communicating them. But I will tell you, there's been a few times in my life where he's made himself so real that I could never deny my belief and my faith, because I can't unexperience what I've experienced. And there's thousands upon thousands, maybe millions of little moments that have reinforced it, but there are some big ones. I can tell you that Elizabeth and I were married for 10 years before we walked with the Lord at all, really. I mean, I was going to church on Sunday, but I was coming home with a 12-pack to watch football or, head over to somebody's house. And I'm not saying that that's awful, but I would go to church and I would have the experience, and then I would be done for the week in a way. I would just live just like everybody else. And if that sounds like judgment, no, that's Todd's story. That's the history of who I was. I would pray and I felt comfort. In fact, when I was growing up, I do remember when I would lay down to go to sleep, I always had a very active mind, but I remember I would say a prayer every night. And I literally couldn't go to sleep until I laid there, until I could see the face of Jesus. Now, that sounds pretty deep. Now, let me pull the curtain back a little bit like the wizard and show you what I really did. I think I even remember the prayer. Dear God, please bless everybody in the whole wide world. Take care of all the sick people and all the widows and the orphans, because I'd heard that in church a couple of times. Please heal everybody who's sick, and please pray for everybody in my family who I forgot to list. And forgive me for everything I messed up today. That was my deep, deep prayer. But then I would lay there until I would actually get a visual impression that was very, very close to the Shroud of Turin, if not just, okay, now I can see it. Now I can go to sleep. And I took that probably right up until about the time that I got a fake ID and started involuntarily sleeping because of the beer that I had, and I lost that connection, never lost my true core belief, never remember a day in my life where I went, is there really a God? I don't ever really remember. I'm sure I asked, but I never doubted. I never doubted, because he had been real to me when I was young too. I just didn't remember all of those times. In fact, most of my earlier memories are the not great times, because those stood out. because I didn't have a tough childhood. I had a really good one. And I had an amazing father, but my father traveled for a living. After we came back to the States, he got a couple of promotions, and his job when we were in San Antonio the first and the second time was to travel the world and inspect dental clinics on all the military posts, not just Army, but certainly Army. And so my dad we'd take him to the airport at the beginning of the week, and we'd pick him up at the airport at the end of the week. And that's what dads did. And then here I am, I'm trying to tell him about my whole week, on Saturday. And my dad had a very Germanic work ethic, the way it was explained to me. He had things that he had to do, and he taught me, you do all the have to do's so you can get to the wanna do's. So he loved to make breakfast on Saturdays, and I was side by side with him, but there were things we had to get through before we could do what we wanted to. We wanted to watch Wide World of Sports. We wanted to watch a Clint Eastwood movie or a John Wayne movie that was going to rerun that after Saturday afternoon matinees, on TV or whatever, but not until the work was done. But I remember trying to talk to him, and the poor man, he'd spent his whole week talking, presenting, words. He was out of words for the week. And that's why I'm so verbal today, I will tell you, is because I was trying to get all my stories out to him just through verbal spaghetti. It's the best way I could put it. And he was very patient, but I could also tell that sometimes he was just like, can we just do the thing? Can we just do the thing? And same with my mom. Once she started working, she was an amazing mother. I couldn't have been more blessed, but once she finished her degree while I was in elementary school and got a job, she got promoted to an executive level so quickly back in the late 70s, early 80s, that she had a really high demand job. So both my parents had really high responsibility, really high demand work. And so I just remember, it wasn't a conscious thing, going, I want more time with them, but I also really want to be independent of them as I got into my adolescence and teen years. And so my friends became everything to me, my influence. I always had a safe home base. Remember all the games we had, kick the can, all that stuff. If you got to home base, you were safe. That was my house. If I didn't get bullied a lot. When you're the new kid in a town, back then you got picked on, then you get in a fight with the biggest kid in school, and then you're friends. I don't think that works today anymore, but it did for me back then. But I had to get through those moments. But I remember coming home emotionally, just the feelings that I didn't know what to do with. And if I went to my dad, he was ready to help solve it. And he would listen to it, but only once. If I went to my mom, she would be so much more upset for me than I was, that it was just this crazy cycle. If I tried to share that I was upset about something, she got upset. And then I was now afraid for her. And she's so upset. Oh my gosh, now what do I do? Now there's just cortisol flowing all over the house. It was a physical thing. You could feel. Dad would come home from work and he's like, what happened? And I'm just like, it's taken care of, and I would shut it down. And so I became very self-reliant. I became capable in a lot of ways, of course, never perfect, but that's how I grew up. So that's also how I kind of did church, was asking questions, studying, learning. And especially when, after 10 years of marriage, we almost got divorced. In fact, papers were filed. Elizabeth was done with trying to raise a special needs daughter who is only 11 and a half months older than her baby brother. And my stepson, our other son in the house, who was going into his teenage years, who was struggling with all of this, trying to find his own space, and I disappear. I would get on a plane and fly out to universities. That was my job in the early 2000s, was to work with universities. So I was gone 70, 75% of the weeks of the year. And I can tell you that it was a relief for me to leave the house with my suitcase because I couldn't fix anything at home. Jen was broken. My wife was broken. My stepson was broken, and I didn't know how to raise him because he was so different than me. He didn't respond to the things that I did. And then there's my little son, Connor, who wanted nothing more than to be with me. And I remember it, but I had forgotten what it was like to be that little guy who just wanted to be with his dad. He didn't even have to say anything. He would literally, if I was eating something, he would climb up in my lap, and I had to share it with him. It's how he found out he doesn't like spicy jalapenos, but he would take a bite of whatever I was eating just to be close to me. So I had that love. It would take me about one night being in the hotel room, just going, no demands. Nobody's asking anything from me. Elizabeth's got it. She's an amazing mother. And she was, even in all of the junk that she was dealing with and going through, she was still an amazing mother to those kids. But I got a break. About the third night in a hotel, I was very lonely, and all I wanted to do was come home. And then I would come home and I wouldn't understand why she was upset and didn't want to spend time with, why she wasn't waiting with open arms. She was waiting with a baby to hand to me, or things for me to do, or she needed to try to get away just to get away. And I didn't understand it because I hadn't seen that modeled. We had a very different life, and I didn't even understand that. I was in denial. But when things started getting very apparent that Jen wasn't going to be okay, or what we planned, I can tell you now that I went into depression and anger, all the stages of grief that they taught parents of special needs kids. There's a story that I actually saw a counselor not too long ago after my mother passed away. And he said, your life, he goes, I've had another parent of a special needs person. And the way they describe it is, imagine you've planned the trip of a lifetime, or you're even going to move to Italy. You've planned everything. You've got your visas, you've got your work visas, you've got your house, you've got everything in order. And you get on the plane. It says, New York to Rome. You get on that plane, and when you land and they do the announcements, they say, welcome to Denmark. And that's your life. Everything you've done was preparing. You took Italian language lessons. You learned the food. You learned the places to go, but you land in Denmark, and now you've got to figure out a whole new world. It looks the same. Think they might drive on the same side of the street, but they speak a different language. Nothing is what it was supposed to be, but it's your reality now. And by the way, you don't get off of this plane and fly back. At least I had that in me, that I wouldn't give up and leave. Even when the very broken Elizabeth said she wanted to leave me. At first, my ego took the hit, but I remember going, I'm so mad. This is so not right. This is so not fair. But I also remember going, well, why? What did I expect? I haven't gotten anything I expected out of parenthood yet, step or natural. My marriage we had some good times, but we had an awful lot of real hard times. So nothing was what I thought. I was succeeding at work, but only so much. I knew I could do better. See the theme? I knew I could do better. So I wasn't feeling great about my work because I was thinking about home. I wasn't feeling good about my home because at some level, even though I couldn't have voiced it, I was escaping every week or 3 weeks out of the month. And then when I would come home, I couldn't wait to see Elizabeth, and I wanted to be close and intimate with Elizabeth. And I don't just mean physically, I mean really intimate in the best way that I could understand. But we were two very broken people, and I had things to do and she had things to do, and she needed help with the kids. And so I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. Sometimes I did it anyway. I would go off to the University of Texas football games with a buddy, and I'd be gone all day watching football and having the time of my life. And she's now 6 days on her own with the kids. And then I come home with, after drinking, enough beer in the daytime that all I want to do is take a nap, eat, and then watch TV. That was what she was dealing with. And I thought I was the good guy. Right? But inside, I knew that I was not doing it right. And when she actually said, "It's over, I'm leaving," she had been telling me for years that she was unhappy, but I wasn't able to actually go, "Okay, let's get help." So when she finally said, "I'm gone," I really thought that was it. But I didn't stop fighting, and I actually did exactly what we're supposed to do. I turned into the Lord, because that is the moment where he became so real to me, because I finally did what we're all supposed to do: surrender. And I remember the prayer falling on my face, just behind where you see us sit every Wednesday, falling on my face and going, "Lord, I need you, because everything I'm doing is just making this worse. It's driving her away. I need you. I need you to fix this." And I felt something. I literally fell on the floor. I didn't trip. I just was on the floor face down. And I don't think that was my plan. But I can now tell you that in the retelling of it, he went, "Okay, so you're finally ready to let me help, instead of asking while you hold onto the wheel and you step on the gas and you hold the shifter." Asking for my help and receiving my help are two very different things. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't do anything but screw this up. And within a couple of weeks, we started going to counseling together, and our marriage was restored in that moment, even if it took a couple of weeks, lots of counseling, and months to walk it out, until fast forward 1 year after the day she said, "I'm gone," we are on our face in prayer in a very small charismatic church that, I got to be honest with you, the first time we walked in, I thought these people were insane. The way they were crying out there was no order. There's the band, which was different than what I was used to with the Catholic Church. They're singing songs. Everybody's singing the songs. They all know these old hymns. And I'm like, "Wait, where's the book? Aren't we on this chapter this week?" I knew the order of a service from having been, but I got to tell you, there was something so real about it that I can tell you the first time it was so powerful, where I was overcome by the second time, probably that prayer. But I remember being in this church, and it was a very small church. I think there was 30 of us. And they said, "Hey," it was part of a network of many very small cowboy churches from East Texas and small church plants all throughout Mexico and Latin America, hundreds of small churches, called Vision International. I mess it up when I try to say it in Spanish. But we were going to host a conference, and there were all these pastors with teams that were driving in from Mexico. And we had this tiny little, we were meeting in an office park, and they needed ushers. So I took time off of work, and I remember it was a 10 o'clock service or something. And I called Elizabeth and I said, "I'm here ushering." And I said, "I don't even understand what's going on, but there's all this smoke in the room. We don't have a smoke machine. We didn't have a fog machine." I said, "I don't understand what's going on, but I got to get back and make sure that I ush." I took my ushing very seriously. right? And so I'm standing on a half wall like this, just I'm watching, I'm in it, and I'm starting to weep. But I'm doing my duty. I'm looking for the next person to come in so that I can get them a seat. That's what I'm focused on. But it was so heavy and the presence was so thick. I kid you not, I have experienced that fog in the room, that mist in the room, and I didn't even know what it was. But I knew, I actually, I don't even think I knew, but the experience was so real that I couldn't even stand against the wall. I became so heavy that my legs couldn't hold me up. It didn't feel like a hand pushing me down, but it was the heavy, weighty presence of the Lord in a beautiful, open, I don't care who's looking at me, crowd of pastors who were crying out, ugly crying out, as they sang out to the Lord in praise and worship for his presence. Lord, let your fire fall on us. And I remember somebody going, oh, if people really knew what that meant, they would never ask for that. So I had those in my ear, but I'm like, wait, this is so real. I remember literally going down like this and going, Lord, I have to ush. Please don't do this. He put me on my knees. He put me on all fours, and I literally could not get up. I couldn't physically get up. I was a brown belt in martial arts by this time. I'm like, I can make my body do things I never thought it would do, but I can't get up off the floor. What is going on? So all these thoughts are going through my head, but it was just his time to minister to me. And so much came out in that moment. I can't even tell you what I was delivered of, let go of, because it might have lasted 10 minutes, it might have lasted a half hour. I just don't know. People found their own seats. And I got up and I worshiped, and I just remember telling her, I don't know how to describe what happened to you, but I so wish you were here. Or what happened to me, but I so wish you were here. But that was one of the first experiential. So guess what? Let's go back to Richard Rohr. When he talks about mystics in his book, I think he does such a great job of kind of defining it. And this is why that book was so pivotal for me. This may be elementary to you all, but it wasn't to me. He said a mystic is someone who learns and experiences the presence of the Lord rather than is taught. So it's not studying the Lord, it's experiencing the Lord. So there have been mystics for thousands of years. And in fact, the early church, they were full of it. Like, I love referencing this. Do you remember when Peter's in jail and the bars fall, the guards and everybody is converted, and he comes to the house and he knocks on the door, and the servant goes running in, and she's like, Peter's at the door. And they're like, you got to be crazy. He's in jail. That must be his ghost. They were more willing to believe that Peter's ghost, his spirit, was at the door than he was physically there himself. There was more credibility to saying the ghost of Peter is at the door than Peter himself. And just think, and I say this with sadness, but just think of how hard we work to get back to that when that was the foundation, that was the norm. And so that mystical experience, and the mystics of Madame Guyon, who Elizabeth read the book, so I don't have to, because she shared all of it with me, but she was just, the story she would tell me, I'm blown away. And at first I was just like, that's just kooky town, but I take it at faith. That would be really cool, but I don't know if I could handle that. Well, he didn't give me a choice every time. There's been 2 more times where I was physically put down, but I will tell you that there's times when I'm always intaking information. I love to learn. I love to study, podcast, books, whatever. I remember driving to a university. Oh, by the way, fast forward, he does absolutely rescue our marriage and gave us the marriage that we actually were supposed to have. And boy, is it a different Denmark's awesome. Let me just put it this way. If you could all move to Denmark, do it. Our Denmark. Because I said it once to this team, I would hate to meet the Todd that I was going to be were it not for Jen. And I can add to it now and say, were it not for everything that Elizabeth and I went through, her childhood, all the stories that were so hard for me to hear, and her young womanhood before I met her, her life before I met her stories broke my heart for her. Even to this day, when I hear about other people's problems, sometimes I have to really check myself, because guess what? Through all that growing up, I actually became very empathetic without even knowing it. I thought I was narcissistic. I thought I was very selfish. But when I'm trying to help somebody, yes, I can move into solution mode. But man, sometimes I walk away with their problem and they feel relieved. I remember a guy at work, at church, when we were in leadership at our last church. His wife was leaving him and he was so depressed. He was calling, or so down and sad. He was calling anybody who would pick up the phone, and this is at all hours of we're all working. But I would take his call because I thought I was supposed to, because I was a lay minister and I'm not in a meeting. I can't really just ignore his call. So I would take his calls. But I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, how's this guy holding a job if he's on the phone with me and he just talked to somebody else for 45 minutes to an hour? But I would give this person really good advice about how to go find your next job, because he did get fired from that job. Shocker. And I actually made connections with companies that work with the company that I work with. I got him interviews. I got him set up. Nothing. And I finally asked him one day, I said, did they not even call you? What's going on? And he said, oh, they said I'd have to work weekends. And I said, I got so angry. I actually said to him, I work weekends. I work weekends when I have to. And he said, but those are my visitation days. And I remember saying to him, in judgment and in anger, probably a little sweeter than I felt, but not sweet. I said, there isn't a judge in Texas who would tell you you can't get a job to pay for the care of your children, because you have to have weekends off to see them. They will change your visitation days. Your wife will be legally required to bring them to you on different days. You tell the judge that I got a job, but now I have to work weekends and my schedule moves. That's life. Well, fast forward, it turns out that Elizabeth had to tell me one time, and I say this with true love in my heart for the guy now, because I would get so frustrated that I found myself actually avoiding him. I would walk into this big church and I would try to hide. Well, I don't hide well. I shine. I used to have a funkier, weirder beard. I stood out, right? And then I'd get up and take the offering or share a little bit. I couldn't hide from him, but I would try, because I just didn't want to deal with it. And she said, what if you thought of him more like Jen? And I looked at her like she had 6 heads. And she said, no, it's not that he didn't hear your words. He's actually maybe not capable of taking the steps that you know he needs to take. And I'm like, well, then why is he even coming to me for help? Yeah, of course, right? Typical. And remember how I was raised, right? I went to my dad when things went wrong. He would go, you did what? And then we go, okay, how do we fix it? What do we do? What do we do now to get out of it? So it was always solution oriented. And I don't mean in a mean way. He did not beat me up, because he could see on my face how I felt. I remember a time he had to pick me up. I'll share this. I was so not myself because of the party that I had gone to in high school that I didn't even recognize my own father when someone called and said, there's a young man on our porch who's all he can say is his name and his phone number. That's how much vodka I had had that night. Remember that next day pretty well. He didn't even punish me for that because he knew that the punishment, I mean, of course, how I was feeling for a couple of days, frankly, was bad enough. But also he knew what I was doing to myself inside, right? But that's how solution oriented. But when Elizabeth said to me, getting back to this person, well, you need to think of him a little bit more like Jen. And I'm like, that makes no sense. She goes, now he doesn't have the capacity to take the actions that you're advising him on. And you know what? She was right. She was right. I'm not going to say he didn't have the mental capacity. That could have been it. It could have just been how broken and how off he was. Because I remember when we were trying to heal our marriage, I made some really poor decisions for my family financially. Because I was so broken and so hurt, I couldn't see past my own pain to what would be a clearly better choice for us and our family on any given day. But I was so hurting that I couldn't get out of my own way in some ways. And so we got so financially tight that they were literally going to turn off the electricity. It never happened. God provided. You know, we missed some payments. Boy, I learned how good bill collectors are, you know, after they sell that stuff. I learned what it was like. And I had never been in danger of electricity getting cut off, phone getting cut off. I mean, that just phone service, you know, to the house, all of that. But we went through it because I actually quit my job to save my marriage. I resigned from that job where I had to get on a plane every month. And you know what they did? Instead of just letting me go, they said, what if for 6 months you just worked from your house? You don't have to travel, you don't have to leave, but you just maintain the accounts. Do you know what that gave me? It gave me, oh, well, sorry, it was actually about 4.5 months. But I had a salary, I had benefits. It allowed us to go get counseling. It allowed me to get counseling in the daytime. That's when counselors worked back then. You know, I don't remember them having night sessions or probably would not have wanted to, but I had to do a few hours of actual phone call work a day and got the full salary, not all the commission because I was in sales, but I got a salary and benefits for 4 months while we got to heal our marriage. Because I made the decision that I want to be the man that I say I am. And that is a husband and a father and a man of God. And I wasn't doing any of those very well before. And I can't do them by getting on a plane. I can't do them by getting on a plane and leaving this family, leaving Denmark every Monday and coming back on Friday to see how things are going. Because I could go out and I could affect change at work. So I quit that job. And they said, we'll carry you until February 1st. On February 2nd, you'll no longer have an income or benefits. Then I got a call from my ex-neighbor's friend who said, hey, we have a salesman here. I know you're not in recruiting and headhunting, but our salesman just left and they need a salesman. Would you come interview? I got hired on the spot and I started on February 2nd with a salary and benefits. That was 2007. That was 2007. And so, and by the way, that's when we met the people who attended this really small church and we went, and it wasn't even a year later that I was on my hands and knees going, what is this? Why are you doing it? I've got a job to do here. Well, I did, but my job was to just let him do his work. So I had to experience it for myself. But what I love about Richard Rohr, and I'm going to tie it a little bit, I actually told Helen that I was going to talk for 10 or 20 minutes and then just kind of let the discussion go. I think it's been more than 10 or 20 minutes. But I want to share this because what I've come into, and there's so much to connect this, a couple more experiences that I can share if they're appropriate, but I want to open it up to more of a discussion. But I want to share this because I sat down to reread the Universal Christ because I kind of quote a phrase, which is I'm trying to quote, but I'm actually probably paraphrasing more than I'm quoting the book all the time. And I recommended it to a good friend of mine. He can't get past the second chapter because he has to just keep going and rereading it. And it is that type of book. And I will tell you, it's no light read. You don't just read this, in little excerpts, or maybe you do because there's so much you just go, wow, let me process this. So I've picked it up probably 3 or 4 times since you all have gotten to know me. And I still haven't made it past chapter 4 in my rereading from my original 2 reads. But I love this because Richard Rohr is a Franciscan scholar, for those of you who don't know, but he's got such a pure heart for the Christ. To the point where, and I'm going to say this, and I know this is going out as a record, I am absolutely a Christian, but I'm not a Jesuit. And that's not a knock on the Jesuit order in the Catholic faith. Yes, I worship Jesus. I actually worship Jesus, the Christ, not the man. Because I believe the reason that he came was to show us in a human form that you could live like this, that we'd been getting it wrong for thousands of years. That I said it to my friend Eddie just on Friday. I said, I'm now convinced that the Old Testament is just the retelling of gosh, did y'all forget who I am again? Did you forget who you are to me? That's the Old Testament. And then Jesus came, not because, and I'm blasphemy or not, because I was a worthless sinner who had to be saved because I was separated from God by my sin, but because I thought I was that little kid who messed up and I didn't deserve, nor was I worthy of his love, attention, and affection. So I was turning around and running away. That's what I thought. Now, I'm going to globalize that and say that's what we all thought. There had to be blood atonement. Somebody had to be punished. You don't just live your life sinning, doing this, hurting other people, doing all this kind of stuff, and have somebody go, it's okay, I still love you. You get disowned, you get disavowed, you get excommunicated. But the way Richard Rohr says it is, a cosmic notion of the Christ competes with nothing and excludes no one. Now, the first time I read that, I was like, cosmic notion. I was like, can you just dumb it down so I can hang with you? But think about it now. Everything we talk about, the cosmic notion of the Christ competes with nothing and excludes no one, but includes everyone and everything. And to keep it legal, let's quote Acts 10:15 and 34 is your biblical reference if you want it. And allows Jesus Christ finally to be a God figure worthy of the entire universe. That to me is just such a beautiful sentence that captures what he's been showing me, is that we were never separated. In fact, the Christ is the reunification of all things, every living thing, every physical thing that was manifested through the Spirit into creation, be it vibration, be it energy, whatever you want to call it. By the way, if you do study science, all we're doing is learning God's design over and over and over and deeper and deeper and deeper and relearning a lot. But Matter only comes together in a physical form because of the vibrations of the particulates. Sorry, I went all university on you instead of universal Christ. But I love this because the next line says, in the understanding of the Christian message, the Creator's love and presence are grounded in the created world and the material distinction between natural and I'm doing quotes, between natural and supernatural sort of falls apart. That's a direct quote from Richard Rohr. I'll say it again. In this understanding of the Christian message, the Creator's love and presence are grounded in the created world, and the mental distinction between natural and supernatural sort of just falls apart. There is no difference. I remember one of our what ifs is, could you be you without the spirit? Could the spirit be you without your physical? Nope. They're not actually separate and never have been. We thought they were. We thought we were supposed to die to the flesh. Watch me try to fast. Elizabeth would have to go on a vacation for a couple of days, right? I will if I feel like he says to fast, but if I just try to do it to get closer to him, all I get is hangry. And then I'll sort of tie off here because Richard Rohr quotes supposedly, and I love this quote, as Albert Einstein was supposed to have said, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. And that is the before we begin into his book. So I highly recommend it. I will also tell you that I had to listen to a podcast and they go chapter by chapter. And if you think some of my descriptions were heady, sometimes I feel like I was dropped into a coffee house with, kind of these hipster intellectuals talking things out. And I'm like, I can't keep up with this. I can't, you've theologically made this so high level that I don't even understand. But Richard in his book actually does a good job of tying it back so that you can understand. So that was a transformational book for me. And I've been speaking way too long. I want to listen some. I want to hear from you. But before we do, I want to tell you in preparation for this, I said yes, a couple weeks ago? And Maggie, I was thinking about, what did I just say yes to? And then Maggie came on and I actually didn't hear the words that you said, but I was so impacted by them when you spoke to me and said how excited you were. And here I am. I'm probably your number one fan of your poetry. When you come on and you're going to share a poem, I'm just like, you made my week. And you're calling me out. That blew me away and just said, yep, you're doing this. You're doing this. And I got excited about it. Well, that Sunday, we're sitting at church and I'm sitting next to Jen. She's in her wheelchair and this little person, 2 rows up, coolest little cowboy, big buckle, plaid shirt tucked into his jeans, cowboy boots, worn to the point where the toes go up like they're supposed to. Just keeps looking at me and comes finally, when the message is over, he doesn't even ask his mom and dad. He just turns around and comes to me and he looks at me and he goes, my name's Jude. What's her name? And I said, her name is Jen. And he looks at her and he goes, hi, Jen, I'm Jude. And I said, what was your name again? Because he had long hair and I actually thought he might have said June. And he kept correcting me, but I kept hearing what my mind had decided. But he said Jude, and he finally looked at me and he said, well, so what's wrong with her? And I said, well, she was born this way. I said, she can't talk, she can't walk. And he said, she can't walk. And I said, no, she can't talk either. She was just born special. And then he looked at me, and by the way, we had already bought our tickets to season 5 of The Chosen opening in theaters to last week. We had just bought them. And I was surprising Elizabeth with our date night for that. And he goes, "Have you ever seen The Chosen?" And I'm just like, oh gosh, what's coming? And he said, "Do you remember that scene when Jesus says, or when the disciples say to him, why was she born this way, blind? Was it her sin or her parents' sin that caused it?" And Jesus said, "She was born this way to reveal the greatness of God to the world." That's what he said to me. I was a mess. I was just a mess, because that's what we have. And that's what I live with. That's what I get every day. If I forget, if I get off track, I walk in and I see that smile 90 plus times out of 100. And I'm reminded of what's real and who I am, because she just exudes the I am in all of us. And, us being able to see the Christ in any other person, and I do mean any other person, is the glory of Jesus and the revelation of the Christ and the reunification of all things. And us realizing, well, gosh, if I'm supposed to see it in them, then I better learn how to see it in the mirror. Because what's the greatest commandment? Treat your neighbors love your neighbors as yourself. I'm like, yeah, but I don't like that guy in the mirror. I know all the mistakes he's made. I'm getting past that. Because to him, he's like, I saw that. But, and I'm quoting Elizabeth, you did the best that you could with what you were dealing with in that moment. You didn't make the decision going, I know better, but I'm doing this anyway. Usually. When I was younger, I might have done that a couple times. But as an adult, I was like, this is what's best for us right now, even if there was something in the back of my head going, maybe you should talk to somebody before you quit that job. Maybe you should give them a chance to give you a leave before you quit that job. By the way, the financial burden came when that second job, I didn't take it very seriously. I was looking for my next job and I got laid off 7 months later, right at the beginning of right before the 2008 recession. Literally November of that year, I got laid off. And so we went without a salary and benefits for 9 months. I was out selling, but it was commission only. So I was bringing in checks, but it wasn't covering. I know what it's like to not have a penny in your account. Your credit cards are full, and having to call your wife and say, you can't go to Target to get Jen new clothes. You can't go to Walmart to get Jen new clothes until I get my commission check 10 days from now, because we don't have any room. I know what it's like to call my mother-in-law and ask for a handout. I know what it's like to go to my mother and ask for a handout because of decisions. Remember, decisions that I had made that put us there. I'll never forget that. I remember a friend of mine who was wealthy, and I said, how do you make that kind of money? He said, I can't really tell you how to make money, but I can tell you how to never be poor again. And that's a very different way to look at things. I can't tell you how to be Helen. I can't tell you how to be Maggie, Teresa, Gina, Kathy, all of you. I can't tell you how to be what you are to so many other people, but I can tell you that I know how not to go back to the decision cycle that creates more and more downward spirals because of who's in me. And I believe this with my eye teeth. Sorry, Ellen. And my I am, that John 20 is so real, to the point that one of my favorite stories I've heard is they went to a sadhu, a guru, in India who had studied the Quran, who had studied the Torah, who had studied the Bhagavad Gita and all the Vedas, who had studied many different religions. And then somebody gave him a New Testament and the Gospels, and they were Western missionaries. And they said, so what impressed you most? And they all expected him to say that God came to die for your sins, and that he did die, and that he was resurrected again. That's what everybody expected him. And he said, no, that was cool. What really impressed me, and I'm just blown away by it, is that your God chooses to reside in you, to not be separate from you at all, but he chose you as his house, which he understood what that gave us access to, that so many gurus spent their whole life through discipline and focused, meditative, contemplative discipline. I love Sundar Singh's stories of him walking around Tibet, just barefoot as a missionary, coming across a guy who's hung by his own hair in a cave to go through that extreme physical pain so that he can focus on the Lord. And Sadhu's kind of like, have you heard about Jesus? And how easy it is. That's where I need to stop now and kind of open up just for comments, questions, because I've taken us all around. But I will tell you that I can't go a day or two without being reminded of who I am and who I'm supposed to be by design, not because I earned it, because I finally turned towards him, but because he's always been there. He's always been in me. I've always been part of the universe and the Christ before I knew it and before I knew to tune into it. And I'm getting more and more reminded of that every day. And I just don't want it to stop.
Amen. 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 Wow. Todd, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that, I'm glad for so many things, actually, right this minute. I'm going to bring us all into the room so that it'll open up. There you go. And give people a chance to see each other. I'd like just to read what Maggie wrote to you in case you probably haven't seen it. Maggie said, I'm your number one, Todd. I have never met anyone like you, so poised, stoic, so reliable, so relatable. Thank you for your in-flight stories. I love that. So inspiring. And I think she said it for all of us. If we can all, you are our number one tonight for sure. For
Yes,
sure.
number one fan. I meant to say number one fan. I am your number one fan, Todd.
Okay.
You are such a special individual, and I know we all know that. And I'm so grateful tonight for what you've shared. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Maggie, you can keep talking. I have a Maggie folder on my computer, just so you know. When Todd said that he's your number one fan, that's the only thing that I take a little issue with, because
I
pardon me?
I saw you go.
No, I'm gonna have to arm wrestle him for this one. That's not true. That's not true. But the rest was really good. That was really, Todd, it was a absolutely, absolutely delightful from beginning to end. Just taking us through your life, you're being transparent. I thought in the middle of it at times, maybe Elizabeth needs to take a section so we hear the other side of the story as well. And Jen, what an amazing, amazing time we've had tonight. And what an amazing family. On my computer, you're side by side here. So it's such a delight, absolute delight. And does anyone have anything you'd like to say to Todd or ask him?
Well, this is Bob, and I'm not going to put my video on because I'm laying down and I look like Jabba the Hutt when I lay down and I'm looking up at the camera. So I'm very vain that way. But when I heard you were going to talk tonight, I said, okay, I can't miss this one because for the few times that I've ever heard you speak, and you do speak very well, and you say that you're not good with words, but you're quite good with words. And um, I just I love listening to you talk, and I love your stories. And um, yeah, that's my word of encouragement. That it's just yeah, it's like I can. There's certain podcasts that I can listen to for 3 hours, no problem, and I could listen to you talk for 3 hours, no problem. So thank you for sharing tonight.
Yeah, that's great, Bob. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that means I have a lot of respect for you, Bob. So that means a lot to me.
Thank you.
Gina.
I just wanted to say thank you and echo, what Bob says. And I think, he's sort of being prophetic too, that maybe podcasts are in your future. Who knows? But I so appreciate your ease and your relatableness, because it speaks to every one of us, and it bypasses things and goes straight to our heart. And it's your sincerity and your genuineness, and and it's not without like amazing content, and I love the fact that you told us your experiences, because those are the things that speak to us and we can relate to. And so I really want to thank you for your vulnerability. And I mean, it didn't come across as you were being so vulnerable, but you may have been. I don't know how you felt, but it was beautiful and real and genuine and sincere, and your heart is so soft and so caring and so compassionate, and it shone through. So thank you so much. It was a beautiful talk, and you shared beautiful sentiments and really meaningful content. So thank you. Really touched my heart.
Thank you, Gina.
Yeah, I would echo all of that, Gina. That's absolutely lovely. Well said. Kathy.
Well, I have to comment on you bringing in Richard Rohr, of course, because I am a super fan of his as well. So I really appreciate how you were able to share with us the process that it was for you as you read it, and just how you saw that unfolding in your life and the impact that it had on you. Having had a similar, my own journey as I was working through the things I was learning from Richard Rohr in through that book. Is really beautiful to hear your perspective and how that really impacted you and changed your life, and set you free in your thinking. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you for reinforcing and even reminding, just through the years when I brought it up. You're closer to it. You've read it more recently, and I'm like, oh, that's what he said. That's how he said it.
Yeah.
It is deep, and I don't think I said this, but I've said this to other people. It changed me so dramatically. I was able to stop judging and saying, oh, I thought I had it right 5 years ago, but now I know I have it right.
Mhm.
And I just wish that they did too. I wish that they just knew. I wish. And it got rid of the tribalism, because you can't, I mean, you can read the book and you cannot change, but you can't hear things like Christ is in every bit of creation and every person who ever has walked or will walk the earth, and then look at them and cuss them out for cutting you off in traffic.
Right.
You
Right.
can, but you can't stay there.
Yeah. True. Absolutely true. What is Richard? I don't, you know what? I'm just learning about Richard Rohr. I feel like I'm coming out of the dark ages here. Is he a priest or?
He's a Franciscan friar, wears the robe and everything.
Okay.
And one of the other things he says, the Franciscan teaching is that the first Bible that existed for 13.8 billion years was creation itself.
Oh, I love that.
The
Love
second
that.
is the one we read.
Yeah. Wow. And the third, the one you are.
Yeah, right.
So don't order the book, Mom. I found a used copy, a hardcover. Right when you started talking, I found it online, so I ordered it.
I
Thank
got
you.
to echo that, Bob. As soon as I wanted to say too, as you were speaking about the book and how you were speaking about the book and the way you were speaking about the book that I've already commented on, I just went and bought it. So, so this will be a fun book that we can talk about.
Yeah, it sounds yeah, something about those Franciscans, right? That I just have a lot of respect for. It's quite an amazing order, and I keep hearing his name, and I read little bits. But thank you for that introduction tonight. That's amazing. Wow. Elizabeth, you listened to your husband for 20 minutes. That's what he said he had.
20 Todd minutes.
I think it was a little bit longer than that. Yeah, it was just so good. It was so beautiful to hear him speak, so honoring and
Yeah.
yeah, even about our hard time. I felt very honored. It was beautiful. I know we've shared about that before, mostly Todd. I think we both did. But yeah, it was beautiful. And it's just such a beautiful thing, this group. And Helen, what you shared about when Todd, I mean, just how it all worked about him being drawn in to the river and to this frequency and this, oh, it's just amazing because you heard him. He's very
Yeah.
work, I'm supporting my family, and so this has just opened up such a beautiful thing. It's just amazing to see that.
It
Yeah.
was like a good movie. I laughed, I cried, and it's true. And I related to your story because when you were describing yourself as a kid, I really connected, and I actually went through a lot of the similar things that you had gone through. So yeah, it was like a good movie, hour and a half speech, and the end. So
Yeah, no kidding. I was like, I don't think I have 20 minutes of notes here. But I did I promised Helen that I would let it be what he wanted to share in the moment and not restrict it just to my notes. And there's stuff on here I didn't even touch.
Well, we are totally 150% blessed that you gave us such a beautiful evening together. And I'm going to just go to some hands now. Sharina.
I'm so glad I came today when I could join you guys. Todd, I don't know, the last 30 minutes, I was just gone with you. I was not even here. I was journeying with you because everything what you were saying, I could connect and everything literally, and then you took us with your emotions, took us with everything. And I never seen anyone talking that from the heart and, genuinely. Men normally don't talk this way. And I really honor you and respect you. And then, and everything what you went through, you learned a lot from there, all those experiences, now that you are using it as turning it around, as you know, that's your gifting now. You are helping others because nothing is wasted, you see. So because nothing is more valuable than experience. Like you said that you learn through not like teaching, but learning through experience. That's what you did, and that is inside you, and nobody can take it away. And you are using it in many people's lives, and more to come, much more to come. So everything was for a reason, and some people can take that as and go in as a bitterness and stay there, but yours is like a love story developed, and it is so beautiful. And yeah, I really want to thank you for sharing it. And beautiful Jen, I truly believe from my heart that she is for the glory of God. I really, truly, truly believe that it's going to happen soon. Yeah, thank you, family. Thank you so much. I love, Elizabeth and Jen, Todd. We love you all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Serena, I love that. Yeah, it was a love story that he shared. That was a great way to put it, Todd. That's the title. Love story. Bob will need a title, by the way, so we'll have to talk. You don't mind if this is posted?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Awesome. Rick and Karen?
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say thank you, Todd, for what you shared. It Your vulnerability and transparency helped me. I related to a lot of what you said, and only now am I able to start being more vulnerable. And yet, it feels comfortable, if that's a good way to say it, that I now, I know another brother, and I don't know very many who are walking with Christ that has experienced some and a lot of the same things that I have, and I didn't know how to walk it out. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't really have anybody to talk to, and it just helps me, as I've been healing and growing in the last, the last few days, the last few months, last few years. Um, it's it's not coincidental that we um, stumbled into the river. I'm so grateful for the time that we had at Cedar Creek and were able to meet, to hug, and to commune with a lot or most of you. Before I say one other thing, I want to say Richard Royer is 82 and he was born in Topeka, Kansas.
Less than an hour from us.
That's just right down the road from us.
Wow.
This is really hard for me. As a young kid, I have to say that I was forced to be in the presence and play with. Um, he was a man, he was 30 years old, who was on the floor, nonverbal, and to me, very scary. And what you shared of how you shared about Jen has opened up a new has helped me see in a different way, has helped me feel in a different way. And oh, to go back to that man. I mean, I can't, obviously. And there just was such a healing for me tonight when you shared what you shared about Jen and how she projects. And I saw that. I just didn't know what it was. Thank you. Love you guys.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd and Elizabeth and Jen, for being in our lives and being who you are. And I just wanted to offer up that something you said just keeps really speaking to me, and I'll ponder it. But you said, not everybody's ready to hear what we have to say. It was really profound for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick and Karen. That you guys are a blessing. You know, sometimes we don't have the words, right? We don't have the words because the feelings are so intense. But I know, Todd, did you just go off?
I don't think so.
Oh, there you are. So you moved from one corner to the other. Sorry. Sometimes when there's so many layers and the time has been so rich, and I think that's what we've experienced tonight, that uh, you shared so deeply, and it's difficult to put into words. But Rick, you did a good job, and we appreciate you in your transparency too. Thank you. Pat, are you there?
Okay, Todd, that was just such a deep moving testimony. And having a special needs son myself, I can relate to you in a different way. I remember over 30 years ago when he first got sick, I thought, well, if we give him a pill, he'll be okay. But there wasn't a pill to make him okay. And when you have that in your situation in your life, and you have a spouse you can go through it with, so many people don't stay together, because of the sadness and the deep emotional hurt and watching your child, suffer and go through all kinds of difficulties. It's painful, but I really was touched by your sharing and how you were transformed, just literally transformed by the Lord, and just saw Jen, and through Jesus and how she ministered to you so powerfully, and just to see your beautiful wife, Elizabeth, how she carries that compassion and love. It was so touching. And just recently, I've been meditating on that song. The Lord my Lord is so faithful. He is, and how his goodness is running after me, that song. And it's just been really coming into a different place in my heart with the journey of our son. I don't know how to explain it, but your testimony was just so beautiful, and I encourage you to share as many times as you get the opportunity. Bless you and Elizabeth and our sweet Jen.
Thank you, Pat. Did you want to say something, Todd?
I'll try. That's a great way to put it. Your goodness is running after me. It's, you know, I remember Elizabeth, who gets there way quicker than I do these days. Things she says, they kind of knock me over, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I agree with that. I got triggered by that, whatever it is. And one that I keep remembering, and you just kind of nailed it, is there's a book, The Soul's Remembrance, and it talks about and this is somebody else's book. This is not my story. But one of his gifts was to be able to remember before he was born. He didn't have it his whole life. He, it kind of came back to him, but he remembers choosing his life, and his life was very rough. I remember the story. Elizabeth was telling me that his mother I think she wanted to marry somebody, and that person didn't want to have a son. So she literally went door to door trying to give him away. And he remembers that, a little 4-year-old boy, I think. That is where I got stuck. I'm like, don't tell me any more of this book. I don't even care how it ends happy. I can't even deal with that story you just told me. I'm not ready to handle it. And then to find that he chose that, I will tell you, I wasn't ready to receive what she was telling me. It was revelation to her. It was terrifying. And it made me even madder at myself. Wait a minute. I signed up for all that pain. I chose this. Why on earth would I do that? Well, I wasn't on earth. But I can tell you now, I can actually say it with merit and truth in it, that I don't want to go through it again, but I would, to be where I am now and to be where we're going.
Amen. Yeah, my son often will say to me, he wishes he was never born. And then I respond with, I would never want you not to be born. And, just to continue to, bring forth life and love, to people that are on a difficult journey, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And can I just say something to Rick? Rick, I just felt when you were sharing about the boy, that you were with, that you can go back there and revisit it. I just felt the Lord was going to take you back there. And there's no time with the Lord, and there's restoration. And I just felt I was supposed to share that with you.
And I agree that you can do that. And just like you can, I think Karen shared about holding her daughter and seeing the results, we can do that. There's no distance, no time, and you'll be a blessing however you do it.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Wow. Susan.
Hello. I'm just so blessed and thankful for tonight. But Todd and Rick, I just want to thank both of you because I've really been the last several months engaging and learning about what does heart-brain coherence, like what's the difference between when you have that and you're operating in it and when you are out of it. And I have to say that both of you, when you spoke, your body language, everything you released from your heart and from your words, that was a verbal evidence for me of heart-brain coherence. It was a verbal and physical and actual image, like I could see it and hear the difference between experiencing it and knowing it, the difference between just the brain or just the heart. The two of you just made the most beautiful expression of that heart-brain coherence in a way that could be seen, in a way that could be experienced by all of us, because it not just came from your words, but the frequency of the way you said that went right into my whole
Yeah.
being, right to the spirit, right through the brain, through the body, through the soul, and right to the spirit. So I just want to thank you for that, because I've been asking the Lord. I said, I know what that feels like for me when I'm in it, but how do I know if somebody else is experiencing it? And tonight I got it. Like I saw and heard and experienced it from both of you. So I just want to say thank you for being breakthrough guys, for just, for just pushing that envelope and having it break open.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wow, Susan, that's the bomb. That is really, really it. Whoa, thank you. I felt what you said, and it's so powerful, and so true, so true. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. We don't want to miss anything.
All the time that Todd was speaking, I could feel it. I could feel it through my whole being. And then when Rick spoke, I thought that was it. I had the revelation. That's what mind, heart, coherence sounds like, feels like. It's like, it's just the difference. And so thank you. I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. 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 You guys want to say something? You good?
That means more to me. That is such a treasure.
Yeah.
Because, I remember one time, I think I was in the kitchen and I overheard you say, "Hey, at this point, we're all grown-ups here. I just assume that you've done heart-brain coherence before, so we don't have to start the session to get there. We're supposed to live out of that." And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. You're doing it, Todd. You're doing it.
I can tell you,
You're being it.
Well, thank you. That's all I'll say. It's repetition, and it's the experience, because now I know what it feels like when I get there.
Yeah.
And I can get there quicker and quicker and quicker.
That's right.
Even the most important part is you feel like it when it's not working. So you gotta, step back in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's just, that's crazy good.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for what you said. I agree totally. And thank you, Susan, so much, because that's something that I'm taking another look at, heart-brain coherence. I'm like, what? That's helpful for me to know that, wow, I stepped into it and didn't even realize it.
Well, best 3 minutes you spend in the day, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie.
Hello. What can I say, Todd? I just want to add to the list of being blessed. Thanks for sharing your experiences. You're in a very sensitive, transparent way, and you mentioning the fact that the miracle that I am chose to live in me and to live in us. So that's awesome. Thank you. I was captivated by your whole presentation. Yeah. It was more than a presentation. It was an experiencing an experience that I experienced while you were talking.
Come on.
Thank you.
Come on. That's so good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Maggie.
Oh no.
Hold on. Sorry, I'm going to put so Todd, thank you so much for tonight. I wanted to share with you what I wrote, if that's okay. Because you really did inspire me tonight, and I felt that your journey it's for all of us. It's for His glory. It's for all of our glory. So thank you for going through it, as we all do. But, for having the courage to be raw and vulnerable, and to share, your story with us, which has done more than you will ever know. That's what I'm just going to tell you what I wrote. So Todd, I'm handpicked by God, poised, your amazing joys, surrendered and centered, stayed, having got out of his own way, vulnerable and raw, genuine to the core, stoic, with words so poetic and deep, deep enough to leap and freefall into the relatable, whose life story shakeable but rotational, leading him to turn in, not out, teaching us how not to discount the bumps in the road, and learning how to carry the load. I'm so thrilled and feel fulfilled to be honoured to know Todd's fight and of his love for Jesus Christ. Todd, thank you for sharing your in-flight stories that are impossible to rewrite, because it is your journey which you tell so free and firmly. Thank you, Jen, too, that we get to meet the Todd version because of you. This Todd version because of you. For all the times that Elizabeth has nudged and urged you, and to reflect the reflection of the I am, so well converged. You are the reflection of the I am, so well converged. To reflect the I am, I've just said that. Finally, this is raw, so please forgive me. Finally, we get to feel firsthand how you get your work colleagues to expand. I love your strong work ethic, your earlier life, so epic. When you say it's okay to make mistakes, they don't disqualify us from anything, and they lead, and the load that we are carrying. They don't disqualify us from anything, and the loads that we are carrying. You have come a long way, a grace and a wonder. May the gates throw open, and you will always be that runner. How beautiful are your feet that spread deep news, good news. Keep sharing, Todd. You really have nothing to lose.
Wow.
That's it. I was just writing some of the things that you're saying, because that was amazing. So thank you.
Maggie, thank you. Thank you. One more time, can we ask you to write it out, and we'll post it? Is that okay? And certainly,
Of course, I'll try to make sense of it.
to anybody who would like one. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Can I send it to you, Helen? Would that be okay?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to get it to anybody who
Thank you, Todd.
would like it. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you, Maggie. What a gift.
Maggie, what an absolute delight and joy you are. And somehow you when you do this to us, you become the benediction. So I like to, if that's okay with everyone, I'd like to leave with Maggie's words in the air. And because I know all our hearts right now, Todd, are reaching out to you. I will say it. Thank you. Two small words, they're just too small. There's so much more that could be said, but thank you. We really appreciate, really love you with all our hearts. And Plank family, Elizabeth, Jen, you are absolutely just, I was going to say gift and joy and all those things. You guys just are the package, and we are We are so blessed. Thank you. Todd, I hope you'll do it again. I really do. I hope you'll come back and come with the epilogue of, because I know there's more. I know there's more. And you live a rich life, and we are so blessed to be part of it. So thank you.
Amen.
All right. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you, be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom. Nothing missing, nothing broken.
We love you.
See you next week.
Love you guys. Thanks, Todd.
Love you all. Thank you. Thank you for pulling that out of me.